All right, well, thank you so much for coming. I'm really pleased to welcome you all to today's workshop, hosted by LGSEC. As people are hopping on, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box, including your name, city, etc. I'm Kelsey Wolfcloud. I am the manager of LGSEC through CivicWell. Next slide, please. So the purpose of today's meeting is to provide a chance for LGSEC members to share their plans for the EECBG program and to gather information from others that people might find useful in putting together the application. As you know, applications are due next month by April 30th, so we hope that this information will be timely for those who haven't completed their proposal or are still working on refining their ideas. Today, we're going to start with some presentations. We're pleased to have the CEC come and speak to us about their plans, as well as the City of Santa Barbara, City of Santa Monica, and the County of Los Angeles. They're all going to share what they're planning on doing with these funds. After the presentations, we'll break out into groups to dig a little more deeply into what each of you are working on. So we're going to get started today with Vanessa Durant from the CEC, who will share with us what they're doing. So take it away, Vanessa. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Durant, and I am the Decarbonization Incentive Specialist at the California Energy Commission and the Program Manager for the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant Program. For anyone unfamiliar with the California Energy Commission, the CEC is California's state energy office and the state's primary energy policy and planning agency. Today, I will talk a little bit about the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant Program and what the CEC plans to offer in the coming months. Next slide, please. The goals of the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant Program, which we're calling the EECBG, are to reduce carbon emissions and energy use, improve energy efficiency, and increase community investment and local workforce development. Additionally, the federal Justice 40 initiative, Justice 40, requires 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments to flow to disadvantaged communities. The grant program the CEC has developed will address the Justice 40 initiative to support communities that are marginalized, underserved, or overburdened by pollutions, and propose benefits in the areas of climate change, clean energy, and energy efficiency. Next slide, please. Funding for this program, which is administered by the United States Department of Energy, the DOE, comes from an appropriation of $550 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also called IIJA. IIJA funding that was made available in 2021 under the EECBG allocated funds directly to state and certain local jurisdictions through a formula allocation. For anyone new to grants, a formula grant is a non-competitive funding program that distributes funds according to a formula set by federal statute. Local California jurisdictions were directly allocated almost $45 million, with the allocation to the state of California at $4.5 million. Federal law requires that at least 60% of each state's formula funding be allocated to local governments that were not eligible for direct funding. 17 counties and about half the cities in California were eligible for direct formula funding, which leaves 41 counties and hundreds of cities that are eligible to receive at least 60% of these funds. EECBG provided direct grants to local governments based on population thresholds. Next slide, please. The CEC has been developing a grant funding opportunity called the Local Government Building Decarbonization Challenge. The program will be open to local governments or groups of jurisdictions applying as a consortium. It will have a menu of project activities that applicants can combine to build projects customized to their community's needs. These project activities will focus on adoption of energy efficiency and other similar measures to support building decarbonization in alignment with the statewide goal of decarbonizing California by the year 2045. Eligible projects will be limited to planning activities only to avoid the complexities of working with federal and state laws, which require reviews of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. When construction projects are involved, these additional reviews for CEQA and NEPA increase the time it takes an applicant to complete an application and the time it takes for the CEC to review the application. As I will discuss in the next slide, there is a federal requirement to commit the funds in 180 days. Focusing the funding on planning activities only allows us to streamline the application and awarding process so we can meet this 180-day timeline. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, federal law requires that 60% of the funding allocated to California must flow to local governments that were not eligible to receive a direct allocation. Additionally, these funds must be committed to those local governments within 180 days of the state of California receiving the award. This means we will have to receive and review applications, award funds, bring the agreements to a business meeting, and get the agreements signed and executed within 180 days. For anyone unfamiliar with or new to CEC solicitations, the CEC's process typically takes up to a year. With the EECBG funds, we are required to complete this entire process in only 6 months. To meet this tight timeline and make sure the funds are committed in time, we have developed a menu of project activities related to building decarbonization to significantly reduce the complexity of applications. The CEC anticipates releasing the Local Government Building Decarbonization Challenge grant program this spring, with awards anticipated by this fall. Next slide. And well, that concludes my presentation about EECBG from the CEC. Thank you all for your time and attention. And I think I'm free to take questions now, or I wasn't sure I'm supposed to wait for the breakout sessions.
Yeah, absolutely, Vanessa. Are there any questions in the group for Vanessa? Feel free to either raise your hand or write it in the chat. Okay, well, if you think of anything as we move forward, feel free to write them in the chat, or we can ask at the end. So thank you so much, Vanessa. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to hear from the City of Santa Barbara and Christian Hoffland. So if you could get on up here, and we'd love to hear what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Christian Hoffland, energy analyst here at the City of Santa Barbara. We're going to talk about our EECBG programming and selection. Next slide. So a little background, the city is about 90,000 people. We got an allocation of around $150,000 for the EECBG selection. And we're on the California Central Coast, so pretty temperate climate here. Next slide. I started to think about how we were going to utilize the funds in this allocation. Really started with our climate goals for our sustainability department's kind of mission goal here, which really started with a few years ago when our city council gave a mandate of carbon neutrality for our entire city by 2035. It's a full 10 years ahead of the states. So we have a lot of ongoing efforts to that end, and really drives our mission statement for our office. And next slide, please. In 2021, 2022, we started our own CCA, where we purchased and defaulted all of our customers in the city to 100% carbon-free electricity in one fell swoop, eliminating a large portion of our emissions throughout the city. This also provided a huge opportunity for our other two largest emissions sectors, natural gas from buildings primarily, and our transportation sector, to be able to electrify those uses in order to decarbonize them. Next slide, please. So we've been going through a 3-year process to update our climate action plan so we can meet our 2035 target of carbon neutrality. Next slide. Those actions are predominantly focused on transportation decarbonization and building stock decarbonization efforts, which is where all of our opportunities are. So we've been actively rolling out and planning programs, policies, and projects to that end. and have a good number of projects and policies already underway and in place to those efforts. So we have a few of them here under transportation decarbonization of work efforts that we have ongoing, and then building stock decarbonization efforts we have ongoing as well. And so those are already underway, kind of already set up programs, policies, and projects that we're going through in order to meet our climate goals. And so this is kind of help driving, like, where do we see the holes in this and where can this money really be effectively used? It's not very often that a jurisdiction just gets handed a large sum of money and says, go do something sustainable with it. It's a very unique feeling and a very unique process that we have to go through of, because normally we're going after grants, grant funds, finding budget money to do very specific things. So having a very kind of wide open slate is a very unique new process for us. And where we really took this was to see where are the biggest holes that we have, and where could $150,000 really make an effectual impact, because it's on a municipal scale, it's not a lot of money. Next slide, please. And so where we really decided to focus is the area of our biggest opportunity that we haven't spent as much time or effort really focusing on yet, which is our hardest sector to address, which is our existing buildings. It's been known for a long time throughout the industry. This is the hardest sector really to address in most decarbonization efforts. Systems are already in place, and there's a large impetus just to replace in kind when you do system replacements. So our goal throughout our climate action planning process has been for our municipality to lead by example for the public. So we want to be able to make sure that our municipal efforts are leading the way for the public to be able to follow and kind of doing proof of concept for what we're asking the public to do. So we really wanted to focus on decarbonizing municipal buildings. Once we had that, we really wanted to focus on, okay, where are our biggest emitters of our buildings? Where do we have the biggest opportunities there? Next slide, please. So we have over 400 facilities in the city. We looked at our building stock analysis and energy use analysis and picked some of our highest natural gas using buildings, our highest emitting buildings that had the biggest opportunities to decarbonize. These are also happen to be some of our biggest public facing buildings, so our city hall, our library, our 630 Garden Street facilities where our building department is housed, our planning division is housed, our public works division is housed. So a lot of city operations that people interact with go on there. Community center and our command center, central fire station as well. So these are our biggest emitters and uses of natural gas. A lot of these also have aging natural gas heating systems in them, which is really driving a lot of the natural gas usage of those facilities. So really focused in on those buildings, a select few group of buildings, knowing that the 150,000 wasn't going to be a large sum of money where we could do our entire citywide decarbonization effort. And really thinking about what are the first steps to decarbonize these buildings, and that's really doing full assessments and make ready electrification infrastructure for those buildings so that we can effectively decarbonize those when we replace systems. Next slide, please. So we really broke this out into a 3-phase approach. Phase 1 being really assessments of those buildings, kind of energy audits, if you will. And those are covered under the technical assistance voucher of the EECBG program. The second phase is really the make ready infrastructure engineering, designing, permitting. I'm getting that all ready to go. And the third phase is actually getting that infrastructure installed within the building so it's ready. So that could be panel upgrades, it could be service upgrades, running conduit to locations, and really getting that building so it's ready to plug and play when some of these systems fail or when they have planned replacements, and we can quickly and effectively keep those buildings operating while replacing those systems. And that phase 3 is eligible under the equipment voucher EECBG program. We really want to stay within the voucher program through EECBG because it's so much less paperwork on both the front end and on the back end in order to manage. We're a very small team here of 4 or 5 people, and managing large state and federal grants becomes a large portion of our time, and it kind of affects how many projects we can do. And so really appreciate EECBG by setting up this voucher program that allows people to much more quickly and with less paperwork and overhead be able to administer those funds. This was one of the blueprints that they gave in their guidance of the energy efficiency audits and building upgrades portion of the EECBG guidelines. And this is a picture of our largest HVAC system in the city with the mountains in the background on top of our central library. So it's a very big multi-zone system that is natural gas heated that we want to do all the make-ready infrastructure and planning so we can replace that with a heat pump system, energy recovery, and highly efficient system. And that is what we are planning to use our funds for. Next slide. And there's my contact info if anybody has any questions about what we're doing.
Any questions in the group? Annie Seacrest asks, how much money were you awarded?
$146,000 and $330, I believe.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. It's a really helpful presentation. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide and hear from Peter Rockmore from the city of Santa Monica. So take it away, Peter. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for letting us share about our program. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Rockmore. I'm a sustainability analyst in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment at the City of Santa Monica. And we, using our EECBG funds, have developed an income-verified e-bike voucher program that we're about to launch. So next slide. Yeah, so I'll start off sort of talking about how we came up with this idea. We were looking at the prompt for the EECBG program. You know, how are we going to reduce energy use, reduce fossil fuel emissions, or improve energy efficiency? And we really came down to e-bikes because they allow us to expand sustainable mobility, encourage safer streets, and reduce fossil fuel emissions by replacing car trips. Next slide. And this program sort of aligns with other city priorities. You know, in our climate action adaptation plan, we have an emissions reduction goal. We also have goals to convert 50% of local trips to foot, bike, scooter, or skateboard away from vehicles. We completed our recent greenhouse gas inventory, and we saw that, you know, no surprise, transportation makes up a large portion of our citywide emissions. So we wanted to think about how we could start to chip away at that. And we also, you know, we offer a rebate program in the Office of Sustainability, an Electrify Santa Monica rebate. That's the goal has been to motivate and incentivize electrification in buildings and in people's lives. And we offer an EV charger rebate, we offer an e-bike rebate, and we offer another suite of rebates. And what we found is that even though we offer higher low-income rebates, we get very few applications under that low-income rebate level. And we did sort of some mapping, and we saw that, you know, if you look at the Cal Enviro screen, sort of our disadvantaged communities in Santa Monica, we had 0 applications from residents living in those communities. And so we knew that when we think about electrification and, you know, promoting sustainability across Santa Monica, we weren't, there wasn't a lot of equity in the access to the programs we were offering. And so we wanted to use this program as a way to really increase that access, increase equity, and sort of build stronger relationships around sustainability in that community. So next slide. Yeah, so here's the e-bike voucher program. Here's some details of what we're going to do with our funding. We're offering vouchers up to $2,000 that we believe can cover the entire cost of an e-bike and necessary accessories like a helmet, lights, or a lock. We might, after getting some feedback from the community, also make regular non-electric bikes eligible. You know, we've heard a lot of feedback from community members who live in multifamily housing and talk about how heavy e-bikes are, and maybe they want a bike to get around, but they can't carry it up their stairs. So we're looking into expanding that to not just be e-bikes. And so that's what we're doing as we come close to launching. We created an income qualification, and we're targeting those low-income residents in Santa Monica. And we're being very broad with our income qualification because we want to be very accessible. So we're looking at previous or current enrollment in, you know, a number of assistance programs like utility assistance programs, food stamps, reduced free lunch, housing vouchers, or we have an income verification form that they can fill out, and we'll check to see if they are at 80% or below the area median income. And, you know, with this, we're seeing this as a pilot program with our funding from the EECBG program and a small amount of additional funding from our office. We're going to offer about 90 vouchers, and those are going to be awarded through 3 separate lotteries. So we're going to open an application and then do a lottery program to award those vouchers over the course of a few months. Next slide. Just talking about voucher versus rebate, you know, we have that rebate program, so we have the experience with it. And we thought a voucher would be a really great way to sort of increase accessibility. We know with rebate programs, the upfront cost is often a hurdle for low-income residents. So the voucher allows us to do a direct payment to a local bike vendor and remove that concern, just completely remove that hurdle. We're working exclusively with local bike shops in Santa Monica, so we're supporting local businesses and residents. And we see this as a cool way to sort of innovate the way that we administer programs in the city of Santa Monica. There hasn't been the framework within the city to do sort of a voucher or direct payment program. And so we're testing this model out, and we're hoping that we can prove the model works and we can apply that to other programs to encourage electrification and sustainability more effectively. Next slide. Yeah, so here's our timeline. Oh, my slide got messed up a little bit, but back in the fall, we applied for the grant, applied for a community energy fellow, and started doing some bike vendor selection. We're really excited. About a week ago, we found out that our grant funds from the EECBG program were awarded. We've been sort of waiting on that so we can really get going. And we brought on our fellow, and we're going to begin our outreach and open our application in April. And then over the course of the spring and summer, we're going to be doing our lotteries to the community, and then finally in the fall really do some follow-up and sort of analysis on, you know, what is the impact, what data can we collect from voucher holders about their habits changing and the amount of trips that maybe have changed from car trips to using their e-bikes, and really sort of use this as a pilot and a proof of concept to launch a bigger program moving forward. Next slide. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the Community Energy Fellow Program through EECBG. We applied to be a host city back in the fall, and we interviewed a number of really great candidates, fellow candidates, and we brought on Alyssa, who's on this call. Hey, Alyssa, you're awesome. We're really excited about the program because it's grown our team by one awesome person who can help us implement the program. So if you have the opportunity to be a host city, go for it. And if you know anybody who might be a good candidate as a fellow, I'd encourage you to encourage them to apply. Next slide. And that's the end of my slideshow.
Wonderful. Any questions for Peter, either in the chat or you can raise your hand. Marna, go ahead.
I had a question. Since you're giving the money out to the community, do you have to do the full application? You're not using, I know you're calling this vouchers, but the vouchers are for the bikes. You're not using the EECBG's voucher program, right? You have to do the full application.
Good clarification. Yeah, we're not using the voucher program through the EECBG. We're just doing the grant, the full application.
And did you, I guess my follow-up, did you find that onerous, the application, or worried about the reporting?
Not too worried about the reporting. I mean, you know, the application was hefty, and it took a while to get approved, but it's done. So we're happy to look forward.
Yes, congratulations.
Great. Okay, Dana, go ahead.
Yes, hi, thanks. We're going to be doing an e-bike voucher program as well, so congratulations on choosing the voucher approach. We were ready about 9 months ago, but we decided to align with the state, the California e-bike program. They're also doing a voucher, and it's literally taking them 9 months, and we're not sure still yet when it's going to launch. Are you planning on launching your program independently, or our primary concern there is that if we launch before the state, then we could be precluding a customer from being able to tap both a local as well as state level incentive. Thanks.
Yeah, we talked about that, and honestly, I think we were hoping we would have been able to launch even sooner. We're launching independently, and I think it's because of the sort of the mystery around when that state program is going to actually get off the ground. We figured let's just go and deal with that if it comes up.
Yeah, seems like a lot of programs are doing that too. We'll have to rethink ours. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, any other questions for Peter? All right, well, thank you so much for sharing, Peter. I'm gonna move on to Luana Medina, who's gonna talk about what the County of Los Angeles is doing. So take it away, Luana.
All right, thanks so much. My name is Luana Medina. I am the County of Los Angeles Environmental Initiatives Division Manager, and I'm here to talk to y'all about what we're doing with our EECBG funds. Next slide. So as you guys are all aware, the EECBG program is designed to help states, local governments, and tribes in implementing strategies to reduce energy usage, reduce fossil fuel emissions, and improve energy efficiency. They use two approaches in the EECBG DOE funding, right? Many of us know they do formula and then they do a competitive solicitation. And now they've introduced, of course, the voucher, which will help to assist for those that have obtained formula funds to leverage those funds quicker. The County of Los Angeles was awarded a formula grant of $1.3 million. It's like 1.2 something. I can't remember the exact, but I'm rounding up. To implement various strategies within the scope of the EECBG block grant. So the county, really thinking about how do we make the biggest impact with this amount of money. And I think some of my fellow local government colleagues has said, for local government projects, even 1.3 million, that sounds large. It's in comparison to the number of facilities that the county maintains and their, goal to be fossil fuel free and decarbonize, or at least carbon neutral of their facilities by 2050. That is a very small amount to reach those goals. But with that being said, I think as a local government, we all find ways to identify how we can use these pockets of funding to impact large community groups. And so in thinking of that, we identified 3 ways to split the funding. One, we would deploy a project that would emphasize energy efficiency and decarbonization measures, as well as DERs, like renewables. Second, we would look to optimize county existing buildings HVAC systems. So we're helping to optimize energy usage. And then third, because the County of LA sees itself as an energy champion and leader for its surrounding communities, and that includes all the 13 counties that surround the County of Los Angeles, to deploy a program that supports other local governments obtaining energy resiliency action plans. So this money is not only to serve the county, but actually other local governments and help them to envision and implement their energy resiliency needs. So let's go into it. Next slide. So a portion of this funding will go, about 30% of the funding will go to support a decarbonization DER project on a county facility. Next slide. The facility that has been identified is the Willowbrook Senior Center. Now, this center was specifically identified because 1, it is within a DAC, disadvantaged community, and 2, the Senior Center serves a vulnerable community list of members, and we felt that we should prioritize a project that would help not only support the county's facility decarbonization goals, but also the community members that live within that community. The project consists of course, of lighting retrofit upgrades, in addition to HVAC upgrades on their rooftop package units and a heat pump water heater. Next slide. In addition, the second phase of the project is going to deploy rooftop and carport solar on the existing roofing so that there can be an element of resiliency. There isn't storage included in this project yet, but we're hoping to identify SGIP funding to help supplement and put in some storage, as well as the county pays for the solar. At least that's the hope. But that's one project, so one of many. All right, next slide. So then another 30% of that 1.3 million is going to go to HVAC optimization. And again, as a large local government, we have multiple departments And the Internal Services Department, under which my team is under, we serve many of the other county departments. And so we look to identify initiatives that can help not only optimize their facilities, but help reduce their energy burden so that those resources can be used to leverage more public purpose offerings to the public. So if you go to the next slide. So with this portion of money, we are going to upgrade or implement new building management systems for libraries and courts. Again, we want to have the biggest impact on the community members that we serve. And so looking at those type of facilities, we understand that when, optimizing HVAC systems will not only reduce the energy burdens of those particular buildings, but also provide improved air quality and comfort for occupants. So really thinking about the holistic view about what projects can we do and have the biggest impact for our communities. Some of the upgrades, of course, will be new controls or upgrades to existing, as well as programming for operations through remote access. We'll, of course, install VFDs, I always get that to us, new sensors and economizer dampers. So really thinking holistically on how we can improve these facilities. Next slide. And the overall impact, of course, we're hoping to achieve is, improved controlled temperature settings, improved front end supervisorial controls and graphics. So this way our facilities management team can have a better access to what that particular building or facility is using and how they can be optimized. Of course, energy efficiency, and maybe in the future with these energy management systems in place, we could look to provide more electric grid resiliency through the implementation of demand response strategies. So anything deployed with these energy management systems would also look to enroll into the local IOU demand response programs. And then last but not least is, improved building operational controls on lighting and temperature settings. So that is the second piece. The third piece, we go to the next slide. So as many of you all know, the County of Los Angeles is the administrator of the SoCal REN CPC funded program administrator. And through that programming, we are taking a portion of the EECBG funding to deploy our Energy Resiliency Action Plan initiative. And essentially, this is a sub-program of SoCal REN. Go to the next slide. That supports the development of EE and DER deployment roadmaps to strengthen the resiliency in critical community infrastructure across public agencies served by SoCal REN. So that means across 13 counties, this program will be offered. And this portion of the funding is small. So just think another 30% of that 1.3 is going to that. However, the SoCal REN has a much larger budget for the overall program. And this is just to supplement to allow for technical assistance and DER audits. So specifically to help deploy resiliency such as renewables, storage, electrification of transportation for fleets, also EV, SCE infrastructure, and really emphasizing this idea that public agencies serve their communities and thus need to be resilient and sustainable. Now, this particular program actually started in 2022. We took some residual funding that we had from the Obama administration ARA DOE funding, and we were able to launch it in 2022. However, we have since diminished that funding. And so this EECBG funding actually came at a perfect time to help supplement this continued program. One of the things we find is that public agencies lack the resources or expertise to create these type of implementation-ready plans to support that type of scope, and also to help support them during the state of an emergency. So the ERAP removes that burden and really helps these participating agencies create their own tools and plans. Some of the things that we will be deploying in this is resiliency action planning, developing scopes, and regional mapping tools that prioritize projects based on economic feasibility, climate change, and I can't read the rest of the stuff. If we go to the next slide. So what's in the scope of some of these activities that the EECBG is going to fund? So like I mentioned, DER audits that will include like shovel-ready opportunities for solar, battery storage, and EV charging infrastructure. The agency will also get an ERAP report. You know, one of the things I always, when this program was brought to me by one of my team members, who I see is on the line, Rebecca Hauser from the Energy Coalition, you know, it was really thinking about the county of Los Angeles is a huge local government, although geographically we look small, but we're huge if you think of our GDP or a budget. But my thought is, you know, the county has a sustainability plan and they were able to resource that themselves. And how about smaller local governments? They also should be allowed this idea of a sustainability plan. And so for us, we envision the ERAP to serve as something as that, right? They can go out and put these resiliency action plans into place and implement them in future, either future federal funding, IRA funding, state agency funding, but really getting them ready so that they're able to take those opportunities or at least take advantage of those opportunities. And so, you know, alongside these reports will also contain Resiliency Hub opportunity analysis reports. So this will also help them to identify where they are most vulnerable through grid data analysis, and also to help them identify where do they need resiliency, like where should they be placing PV and battery storage. So I think all of these coupled together will have a meaningful impact. Next slide. So here's just some of the components of the reports, but we won't go into detail because I don't want to take too much of everyone's time. But once I know LGSEC posts these slides, you'll be able to look at what is included. This is an example of one of the reports. Next slide, sorry. And let's just talk about the impact. So with that 30% of that 1.3 million, we aim to support over 24 local governments. And hopefully each of those local governments will receive 2 DER project scope ready to be placed in either a public RFP or to be leveraged to utilized in a grant opportunity or a federal opportunity and so forth. Agencies will receive toolkits and coaching. They'll also be able to have this kind of integrated, cost-effective energy implementation strategies developed. And then, you know, this program is really to help fill the gap where public agencies may be short on staff or financial resources. So really thinking about how we are impactful with every dollar we have received. So that is, I think, my last slide. Go to the last one. I've probably been talking too much. Does anyone have any questions? No. Oh, yeah, it's pretty good.
No questions for Luana? Wow, you guys are doing a whole lot with that money. That sounds super interesting. I see a question in the chat. Curious, who will be completing the solar work on the Willowbrook Senior Center?
So Stella, that is, since it's a county facility that has gone through our competitive solicitation through our energy, I forget, project master agreement. So I don't off the top of my head know who it is, but I could get that for you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your presentation and to all of you all for sharing with us what you guys are doing. Let's go to the next slide, John. Okay, so now we're gonna hear from each other in breakout groups. So based on our registration, we asked you all what, you know, in a couple words, what you were planning to do. So the vast majority of people are either doing something around clean mobility and EVs or around building and electrification. So we're gonna have 3 breakout rooms, one for EV and mobility, one for buildings, and then another kind of miscellaneous group. So I'm going to open up breakout rooms here in a minute, and you're going to be free to choose which group you'd like to be in. And then 3 of our board members, Corey Downs, Marna Schwartz, and Daniel Sortero, are all going to facilitate the rooms. I'm going to add here a Jamboard link that you are welcome to use to help facilitate the conversation. So during the breakouts, we want to hear from each of you what you're planning, where you're at in your application. You know, if you have any questions for the other people in the room on what they're doing. So we're hoping that those who are far along in their planning process can share kind of relevant and replicable ideas with those who are not as far along, and those who are not as far along could share, you know, what gaps they're facing or what questions they have to get their applications in. So we're gonna have about 30 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then when we come back together, we'll kind of do a little share out of what we heard. Are there any questions on that before I open up the breakout rooms? Okay, wonderful. I'm going to open up the rooms and you guys can all choose where you want to be. And John and I will be popping in and out and seeing how everyone's doing. All right. Okay, so go ahead and choose your room.
That is so cool, Kelsey. I'm just amazed by this technology. I'm like, this is so cool. I didn't know I did that. All right, awesome. Thanks.
It is cool. And we got a couple people here left in the room. Is anyone having trouble getting into the rooms?
Yes, I was approaching that differently. Definitely.
That's my interpretation, Corey. That we've been talking usually about what everyone's doing, and I'm going to click yes on that one. I think that's good enough.
Maybe we can count this too. Check, we did it. We talked to each other.
Any other takeaways from the breakout groups or any other questions that you had that came up that you were unable to answer within your group?
Trying to find, I lost our Jamboard. Oh, there we go. There's the Jamboard note. But yeah, we had some really good conversations. You know, fleet electrification is definitely something that a lot of jurisdictions are looking at. That's something the city of Chula Vista is looking at. You know, it's a kind of the chicken and the egg. Is it the charging infrastructure or is it the EVs that you need first? And that's something that we're still trying to get across, as well as the long lead times for EV charging infrastructure. We're at the city, we're thinking about trying out some or piloting some portable non-connected solar EV charging for facilities where there's a really long parking time and they can use that slow charging. But one of the reasons we're doing that specifically to kind of get around some of the installation backlogs that we have for just traditional charging infrastructure.
Cool.
I can also just call out that, you know, we contacted DOE with some questions around our application, and they're very quick and good to respond to that, and did identify that we have 8 free hours of scoping for a technical assistance voucher, where they'll help with identifying costs and be able to refine our scope as needed. And so that's something we had not yet done and we're planning to do, and we encourage other people that there are good opportunities to contact DOE with your questions and then work through it with them. So.
Great. Thanks. All right. Well, if there are no more takeaways, I think we can end early. I hope this was helpful for people. I know I found it really interesting to see what other people were doing. So we'll end 15 minutes early here, and I really appreciate you all coming today and sharing what you're doing.